hello to you loyalists and purists alike, and welcome back to Experienced Points, the pompous show with the even more pompous host. Now, a moment of silence for a fallen friend. Okay, that's enough. Yes, it is with a heavy heart that I must inform you that Sega, that is, the only company that was able to go head-to-head with Nintendo in the glory days of the 1990s, is withdrawing from making console games. And now is going to be focusing on the PC online market and mobile games. Oh, glory be! I was beginning to wonder what was going to save those strangled and desolate markets. Thank God Sega's here to save them. Okay, so it's easy to be skeptical and probably disappointed by that news, because if you were old enough to be my age by now, then you were probably either a Nintendo or a Sega kid, unless you were spoilt like me, in which case you had both. So, the news that Sega is moving to two markets that are infamous for crappy quality control and microtransactions probably creates some unrest. I mean, what's Sega going to do that both those markets aren't already doing in abundance? Ponder that as you will, because I'm not going to sit here for 8 to 10 minutes and do it for you. No, I am far too confused for this, because I remember when Sega made good games, and I also remember when Sega made crappy games, and now no games. So when did that happen? It's hard to pinpoint. I mean, at one point they were great, and then they weren't, and now they're gone. What the hell happened to Sega? When longtime entertainment company Sega blasted onto the console scene proper, they were already established as a successful arcade game developer thanks to titles like Zaxxon and Turbo, but their initial attempts at a decent console, the SG-1000 and 1000 Mark II, underperformed in the face of Nintendo's Famicom thanks mostly to a lack of innovation. Realizing their best shot was to outperform the Famicom on a technical level, they poured effort into creating a more powerful machine with a larger color palette, more RAM, and access to cartridges with more storage than Nintendo's. In 1986, after a decent Japanese launch, but one which failed to replicate the popularity of the Famicom, Sega followed Nintendo to America, where the 1000 Mark III launched as the Master System. Despite a comparatively large catalogue of games for the system, Sega recognized that they needed a Mario of their very own, and thus was Alex Kidd in Miracle World positioned as Sega's mascot game. However, while Nintendo had bundled Mario in with the NES, Sega did no such thing with Alex Kidd, and the install base for the game was underwhelming. This was somewhat rectified in Western models of the Master System 2, which came with the game built into the hardware. I recall playing Miracle World a lot as a kid, but not as much as the other game I got with it. Earlier, at the end of the 1980s, Sega recognized that their opportunity to get a head start on Nintendo for the next generation was closing, and so they drew from their massively popular arcade division in which they had been producing 16-bit games for some time. For once, they had the edge. The Mega Drive launched in Japan in 1988, to be completely ignored in favor of the just-launched Super Mario Bros. 3. I mean, talk about bad timing! And once again, the first year of the console's life was disappointing. After rebranding the console the Genesis and launching in the US in 1989, Sega focused on developing a Mario killer, and while their new mascot was developed by an international committee, the results were still pleasing. Ladies and gentlemen, Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic would be bundled into Mega Drive boxes, the 90s in-your-faceness of the character and the blistering speed of the game separating Sonic from the happy niceness of Mario. Finally, Sega took pole position. Sadly, it was all downhill from there. The Sonic series of course remained dominant as each game built on and improved the experience, and other titles like Echo the Dolphin added to the expansive backlog of arcade ports like Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. But Sega seemed to have no idea what its next move would be, releasing add-ons like the mega expensive Mega CD and the commercial failure 32X. Basically, it began to look like Sega had lost the plot, and this only became more apparent when the Sega Saturn came out in 1994, and, well, we all know what happened there. PlayStation! Skipping over that disaster, Sega pretty much appeared to be putting all its stock in once again being the first to jump to the next technological level. No mean feat, of course, as thanks to the N64, everyone else found themselves jumping from 32 to 128-bit gaming. But I remember back in 1998, my friends and I were already discussing Sega's upcoming Dreamcast as a death rattle for the company. Now, most people remember the Dreamcast fondly, and who wouldn't? It was a marvelous machine, years ahead of its time with integrated internet browsing capability and the second screen functionality of the VMU, and it gave us classics like Crazy Taxi, Shenmue, and Sonic Adventure, which, let's be honest, is the last time Sonic really resembled its 16-bit glory. And now there's the interesting point, because nowadays everybody gets on Nintendo for constantly going back to the well and rehashing old ideas, but they always sell and usually help to fund Nintendo's risky innovations in hardware. Sega, in contrast, refused to keep going back to the well, where it could justifiably have done so for series like Echo, Shenmue, Knights, and Streets of Rage, but they didn't, even when fans begged they didn't, except with Sonic. Fast forward a few years, and indeed the Dreamcast was Sega's console swan song, as they positioned themselves as a third-party developer for companies like Sony and primarily Nintendo. It would still be some years before 90s kids would finally get to unleash Mario and Sonic in head-to-head battles against each other in the same game, but in the meantime Sega just kept on making Sonic games, once again trying to innovate rather than making more of the same. Perhaps the modicum of success they had with the Dreamcast taught them to always innovate? How sad that this will now be forever considered a mistake. Which brings me inexorably to the Sonic series, the other major facet of Sega's success and demise, which now repeats the same mistakes Sega made with its consoles and ultimately cost them their stake in the console race. This is a point that I will illuminate on during a segment that I will be calling How to Destroy a Mascot, but which you will be calling Swinehouse Bitches About a Childhood Hero. Okay, so at the end of the Mega Genesis whatever era, Sonic was absolutely on top of the world. The gameplay had been refined to the point of near perfection, when you consider the timing necessary to fight against the Master Emerald-powered giant robot at the end of the Death Egg Zone in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And how serious was that sequence flying through space in the Doomsday Zone? It all felt like you were actually saving an entire planet from a megalomaniacal lunatic so hell-bent on escaping that you had to throw yourself into a race against time and space to stop him. Seriously, the Sonic canon was never cooler. So much so that there were 2 cartoon shows and at least 2 comic series. And okay, the cartoon shows were kind of lame, but the Fleetway Sonic the comic series was immense. Fleshed out characters, a nightmarish world where Robotnik had already won, serious threats to characters' lives. It was all awesome, and Sonic, for all his wisecracking 90s cool dude stuff, was also allowed to be serious at times. When Sonic Adventure finally came out, having been through a hellish development that saw it begin as a Saturn game, it sold well, and gamers turned on their Dreamcasts, eagerly watched the incredible intro sequence, and heard Crush 40's perfectly suited soundtrack. It was a good game, for all its camera issues and nonsensical story. Sonic Adventure 2 would only further this. Though for the life of me, I have no idea why they changed Sonic's appearance for the games, or why they saw fit to make all the characters spout cliches, or why they went with Eggman over Robotnik, or why they made the whole series exist on 20th Century Earth. Things went seriously downhill for the series with Sonic Heroes, the first game developed after Sega left the console race. It was sort of fun, I mean the first level anyway, but the story-driven nature of the Adventure series was gone. You had to play as 3 characters at once, all of whom controlled basically the same, and the levels became nonsensical rubbish the further into the game you played. Since then, Sonic has grown sillier and sillier until it's basically impossible to want to play the games anymore. Sega had some success with Sonic Unleashed when they realised their Hedgehog engine side-scrolling sections were popular, and the God of War-esque Werehog sections were playable if unnecessary. The plot was rubbish though, and a wild departure from even the world of adventures, with awful characterisation and worse dialogue. They had even more success with Sonic Generations, which married classic platforming of older Sonics with the speedy roadrunning of modern Sonic. But once again, they threw out this great idea and went back to the drawing board and made Sonic Colors. Still not a bad game, but why? Even Lost World was a good game with some original ideas, but why can't Sega sit still on a concept? Finally, Sonic Boom. One of the worst ideas ever, in an attempt to pull Sonic out of his slump by completely redesigning all the characters and removing what made them them. Apart from Sonic, who behaves like he's in a midlife crisis at this point. I mean, he's still a wisecracking 90s cool dude, and it's 2015. It wouldn't be so bad if it was at least ironic and we were all supposed to chuckle, but he's portrayed as something still to be thought of as the absolute zenith of cool. Maybe I'm just too old for it now and I need to grow up and let go, but if we all do that, then who the hell is the audience for Sonic? Because the gameplay has suffered so much over the years with sideways decisions, lousy mechanics and god-awful camera angles that the only people who'd want to stick by it must be those who were there in the beginning, before they retconned all that away and left us with a bunch of anthropomorphized anime characters in a world that's basically our own, full of offices and boring humans and okay, I'll shut up now. One more thing. Bandages everywhere! These characters didn't need reworking. Rant over. The bottom line is, if you only make one or two big noticeable games, and the only series still really associated with you is the one you're slowly poisoning by throwing the baby out with the bathwater on both gameplay and design over and over and over again, pretty soon everyone's going to be sick of you. That's when you get the Sonic cycle, and games like Sonic Boom that's so woefully underperformed that Sega has now given up on trying to reinvent the wheel, and that's basically the only thing they have been consistently doing for the past 17 years. I'm sorry, Sega, but yes, old friend. Maybe it is time to get out before you do any more damage to yourself. Okay, so I didn't want to sit here and slag Sega off for 10 minutes, but that's what's happened anyway. Sorry about that, people, if you're a Sega kid. I mean, what are you going to do? This is all you're going to get from now. Bye-bye, Sega. Bye-bye. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you like this video, subscribe or hit the like button, share it, tell your friends, make me famous. Thank you very much, and see you again.